Good afternoon from Cayo in Belize. This is John Stodghill, elder at Bethany Presbyterian Church, working with the St. Andrew's group over here in Cayo. Today I want to share a couple thoughts about identifying and developing leaders. Identifying and developing leaders. Let me ask you a question. Are leaders born or are they developed? Well, many books have been written about that, and most people would agree that leaders can be developed. Sure, there's some natural born leaders, but most leadership skills can be developed. I would like us to think about two different passages, one in the Old Testament and one in the New Testament, that relate to this topic today, identifying and developing leaders. The first comes from 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 7. And this is a very familiar passage, 1 Samuel 16, where God is appointing a replacement for Saul. And Jesse, his father, parades 7 of his sons through, and God didn't pick any of them. And he says, Jesse, is this all your sons? And he says, well, no, I have the least son, but he's out in the fields guarding the sheep. And so he says, well, summon him and bring him. And sure enough, David was the one that God had chosen. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, it reminds us after Samuel saw the first son and said, well, certainly this is the one. It says, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see a man what a man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. The children of Israel had picked Saul, the first king of Israel, because he was a head taller than everybody else, and he was very good looking and strong, and that was not what God's looking for. God instead looks not at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. The second passage I want to point out and then make 3 points is in the New Testament, and this is actually Jesus picking a couple of his disciples. These are the first 4 that he picked. And this is found in Matthew 4, verses 18 through 22. Matthew 4, 18 through 22. Now Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee and saw 2 brothers, Simon, called Peter, and Andrew, his son, casting their nets into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fisher of men. Then they immediately left their nets and followed him. And in verse 21 it says, and going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat, with Zebedee, his father, mending their nets. And he called to them, and immediately they left the boat and their father, and they followed him. So just 3 brief little points of application here. Number 1 is as we pick leaders and develop leaders, we should not look at outward appearances, but God judges the heart. And that's very, very important point. So I can't see your heart, you can't see my heart. How do we judge someone's heart? Well, I think it's interesting in all of these incidences that we've just read, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, what were the people doing? What was David doing? He was working for his father. He was watching the sheep. What was Simon, Andrew, James, and John doing? They were working. They were doing their skills. So look for people that are active, that are already doing work. They're doing the ministry that God gives them to do right where they are. They're not sitting around waiting for someone to call them or a phone call. They're actually working already. So we can't see the heart, but we can see others' actions and we can see what they have demonstrated, like David taking care of his dad's sheep and these men actively working. The other point is that there was no resistance, and immediately they left their nets and they followed Jesus. David was called and he yielded to that. Leaders and leadership have to be developed. We mentioned that from the get-go. That's my third point of application. Be patient. Leaders have to be developed, and leadership has to be developed. It is estimated that David, from the time he was anointed or commissioned to be the king to his coronation to when he actually became the king, most commentators say that it was from 15 to 22 years. 15 to 22 years of just simply doing what God called him to do in preparation for taking over the kingship of Israel. Well, what about the apostles? Well, we know that Jesus spent 3 years of intensive work with all of the apostles that he called. And those 3 years were developing their leadership skills. So finding someone who is working, pouring time into them, and giving them more and more responsibilities. That would be our call to action today. Look who is working in your church. Young men, young women who are already active, older men, older women, younger kids as they're coming up that are doing stuff. Identify them by their actions. Pour your time, pour your efforts into them. Give them more responsibilities, and you will be developing and identifying leaders, godly leaders, to help lead our denomination into the future. Thank you, and have a nice day.